Welcome to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness, the podcast for hormone and functional medicine providers who want a thriving, predictably profitable practice and maybe a little less stress along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Jody Lane, and I've worked with lots of clinics in marketing, sales, and business development, and I have seen what works and what doesn't. And here's what I believe. Hormone and wellness care should be available to everyone who wants it. And while providers know the medicine, many struggle with the business side of their cash practice. And that's where I come in. See, this podcast is here to share real strategies, real stories, things you can implement in your practice right away. So I am so glad you're here. Come on, let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness. I am Jody, and before we start, I want to tell you why I'm a little nervous about this show. See, I'm a huge consumer of podcasts, and I came across this one podcast called Healthpreneur because, well, the title appealed to me. I work with hormone clinicians, and I have found that they become entrepreneurs, and therefore, obviously, the title just made sense. And so I started listening. I listened and I listened, and I found myself nodding in agreement to just about everything this man said. So I boldly reached out on Instagram and asked him to join me, and he graciously said yes without hesitation. So today I am a little fangirl excited to have Yuri Elkaim on my show, and that this is going to be a real treat for all of you listening, I guarantee. And after you listen to this episode, I know you're going to want to go binge listen to everything or binge watch, because Yuri's big on YouTube, a whole lot more, and I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes so that you can go grab him. Yuri is a former professional athlete, New York Times bestselling author, and the CEO and founder of Healthpreneur. After 20 years in the business trenches, he's considered one of the world's leading business mentors for health professionals who want to create scalable businesses that reach, teach, and influence more people while enjoying a better quality of life in the process. Before starting Healthpreneur, he built and later sold a successful online health empire that went to help more than 500,000 to better health, while providing him the platform to write 3 best-selling books and sharing his message on major media outlets like Dr. Oz and The Doctors. Yuri, welcome to Beyond Hormones.
Great to be here, Jody. Thanks so much for having me and the gracious intro.
Absolutely. So I want to start with a personal question. This is more for me than anybody else, but I'm just curious. The fact that you said yes to me so fast says a lot to me about who you are as a coach. So I'm curious, what had you say yes?
Well, it was besides the really cool red glasses that you have, which, by the way, I think they're really cool. I didn't obviously know that from your
Thank you.
message. Listen, like for me, I say no to a lot of things. I say actually no to most things, to be honest, because you get to a point in your life and in your business where if things do not align with your vision, it's a no. And I understand that some people might see that as like, oh, you're too cool for school. But I think I just have to be very protective of my time and where I divert my energy. So when you reached out, even though technically on paper we're somewhat competitors, I've never even considered that. Like it's like we're on the same mission to help practitioners build better businesses so they can help more people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so like if this reaches a couple people or a lot of people and it helps them in some way, shape, or form, I'm happy to do that because it aligns with our mission of helping a billion people. So again, I thank you for reaching out. And like again, to your point, I say no to most people who reach out to me in general because it's just like it's not aligned with what we do. And I know that might be limiting in some cases, but I'm happy to talk about business to people I care about, even though I don't know them personally, which are, to be honest, I think like who has more of an impact in people's lives than practitioners. And I have like this bleeding heart because I was one of them back in the day of like you spend all this time becoming knowledgeable and then you learn nothing about business and then you just hope for the best. And so I feel happy to support this mission of just getting the message out in this format. So I was happy to.
That's awesome. It's interesting. We only exchanged a couple of sentences, but we had the same purpose. That's
Yeah.
why I asked you. As a matter of fact, we're going to get to it a little bit later, but your last podcast, I think I'm going to start requiring every client I work with to listen to. It's the 4 different types of marketing, and you rank them in order. Like your content is so incredibly powerful for practitioners that competing or not competing, everyone needs to be listening to your show.
Well,
So
thank you.
You're welcome. Our paths are very different. So I would love to, I did a lot of research prior to getting on the call today to learn about you, and your path is quite interesting from athlete to practitioner to business coach. Can you share a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, so when I was 10, I wanted to play pro soccer. I don't know how it happened, why it happened. I'm like, that's my life. I'm going to play pro. That was it. So from 10 to 25, that was all that existed for me. But in that process, I ended up losing all my hair when I was 17 to an autoimmune condition. And I didn't know why that happened. I was like, huh. And so it was actually the best thing that happened for me because that really opened the door into the world of health. I was very active and fit, but at the time I didn't recognize that fit doesn't mean healthy. And
Hmm.
so although people thought, oh my God, it must be so hard to lose all your hair, I was like, well, it's only my hair. I mean, like people have way worse. And so that was the entry point between like being passionate about like sports and then now having to learn about health. That propelled me into this world. I went to school for kinesiology and health sciences and then nutrition. And then I started doing work in those areas for many, many years. I played pro soccer when I graduated from university, and I did that for a little bit. And then I realized, you know what? I don't know what it is, but I have a bigger purpose here. And so I quote unquote retired when I was 25, and I came back into kind of practitioner mode, worked one on one with people for like 7 years, and then got burnt out 12 to 14 hours a day. I felt very underpaid because I didn't kind of like step into my worth at that time. And I wanted to help a lot more people. So in 2005, I took everything I was like all my knowledge, nutrition, strength and conditioning, all that stuff, and I brought it online into some type of format to hopefully help more people. And after many years of struggling with that business, because I had no idea how to build a business, let alone how to do that online. And for context, I was selling information, courses, coaching, et cetera. And it took me 3 years to get out of poverty line income with that business to the point where eventually it took off because I got proper mentorship and guidance and so forth. And that business grew to a very high level, some of the stuff you mentioned earlier. And about 13 years after starting that, I had, well, even in that latter couple of years before selling that business, I had a lot of other practitioners reach out for business advice. And I was like, okay, maybe there's an opportunity here because I had been teaching health, fitness, nutrition for so long. And then I was like, well, if my goal is to reach 1 billion people, what if I could just share what I know with other practitioners so they could help more people and collectively we can help more people? And that's where the genesis of Healthpreneur came about in about 2016. But I went through like a full year of imposter syndrome, hardcore, because for my whole life, I was just like this health guy. And now I'm like, well, what are people going to think if I'm this like business and marketing guy all of a sudden? So it took me like a year to just get over myself and then eventually go full in with Healthpreneur. And then now that we've been doing that now for 8 years, 9 years, and it's been amazing because I love business. I fundamentally like talk about this stuff all the time. And it's great being able to empower the good guys, the good girls, like the people who have the good message to help people. And then we just get to support them on the business front. And so that's kind of the evolution from where I was to where I am now. And I don't know what the future holds. All I know is that, we have a big vision. I have no clue how we're going to get there. All I'm focused on is like the next 30 days and the next 30 years. And as long as everything kind of aligns, I know I'm moving in the right direction.
That's awesome. There's so many cool things that you just said. So, first of all, I have to tell you that although our paths are different, the moment that we decided to go into business coaching is the same. Just
Yeah.
really, really quick, I was speaking at WorldLink Medical at their business course, and I was the chief operating officer of a hormone clinic. And after I sat down, I just started getting emails and text messages and people calling saying, "Hey, can you come help me?" And I had that exact thought. If I want every person on the planet to have access to hormones, the easier way to do that is to help other practitioners. So I
Yeah.
completely get that. But I also want to point out, and this is really for the listeners, like you have a why. Like
Yeah.
your own health issue was the why that started it all. And I really do think that a lot of practitioners will struggle in business if they're not connected to their why. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like part of it is like, I love the fact that practitioners all come from a good place of like, I had some issue, which got me into why I do what I do. I had digestive issues. Therefore, now I'm like this expert in GI stuff or whatever it is. And I think that's a really cool place to come from because beyond the money, we actually just want to help people. But to that point, it also becomes a decrement because then what happens, you become the wounded healer where you want to help everyone. You don't want to say no to people. You want to kill your, like, cut your prices so that more people can afford it. And then every practitioner gets burnt out because they're working one-on-one. They have no leverage. And then it's like, then there's like this internal battle of like, how do I make sense of the business while also trying to help people? And this also took me a long time to recognize. And it's really, even for me to say this, is like what I've realized is the people who need your help the most very often want it the least. And that's a very hard pill to swallow for someone who fundamentally cares about changing the lives of like 1/10 of the planet. Right. And I think like most practitioners don't understand their value until they've kind of been just like, thrown rocks in their face for too long, to the point where they're like, you know what, I'm going to say no to people and I'm going to build the business that I want to build,
Right.
whether that's how they work with patients or clients or how they charge. But I think it's a non-negotiable to learn the business side of things. Like we speak with practitioners all the time and they can be doing millions in their practices and they'll spend $75,000 on an x-ray machine or some type of equipment. But when it comes to marketing, they're like, I've never spent that amount of money. I'm like, dude, you just dropped $75,000 on a piece of equipment that's going to collect dust
And be
if people
outdated in
don't
two
even know
years.
you exist.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mindset more than anything, where they think that more letters behind their name is going to somehow entitle them to lead flow or patient flow, and it doesn't. And I think there's a really, really big problem in, we'll call it private practice, where a lot of, and again, it's both good and bad. Like a lot of practitioners are like, our whole business is built on word of mouth. I'm like, that's terrific. And why are we celebrating that? Right?
Right.
You've built a no marketing or acquisition system to reliably go out and put your name out there and get people coming in. And that's not a business. Like that's just a good service that people happen to talk about. And if that's where you want to keep it, cool. But I think like there's just like, it's really cool when you talk to practitioners who see the value in building their skills around business, around ops, around marketing. Because the way I look at this is, if you don't get better at business, you're playing small and you're playing selfish, because you have so many more people that could like recognize who you are and how you could help them. And if you're not willing to put yourself out there in whatever way, then you're depriving them of knowing who you are and potentially getting helped by you. And if they don't know you, they're going to choose someone else, right? And that's fine for them, but maybe not so much for you. So I
Right.
think the business piece, it's just like it's a non-negotiable. And I think a lot of practitioners, like, you can outsource it to different agencies and whatever, but I think fundamentally there are core things in the business that I think all of us need to get really good at. Number one is messaging. I think a lot of people try to outsource their messaging to agencies that are just going to use AI to write on their behalf. And I'm like, dude, like the core of your belief system is your message. Like, write emails, write content, like whatever it is you want to, like however you want to share your stuff. For me, it's video. I'm not going to outsource that. That's the one thing I do in my business that is probably the only thing I can't have someone else do. And it's also the one thing I love doing the most. And I think it's probably the most impactful for our brand. And I think a lot of practitioners don't like marketing until they realize that marketing is simply teaching at scale.
That's
So
right.
like, would you want to be on podcasts, you want to speak on stage, you want to write books, you want to do videos? That's all like literally just sharing your ideas and content. That's marketing. So I think it's like a non-negotiable to get good at that.
So you talk about messaging, which is obviously something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially with AI now, as you mentioned, because it's just so easy to type in a prompt and, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
What would you say? How do you connect your authenticity to your message?
Um, so I'll give you my process because
Yeah.
this might be helpful. So I think what a lot of people do is I'll just use ChatGPT as an example. So they'll like, hey, ChatGPT, write me an article that sounds like I wrote it about this topic. And then ChatGPT writes the thing and they're like, that's close enough. And then they post it. The problem though is that I don't know if like there's just like this spidey sense that we all have that knows, like, whether it's an M hyphen or just the way things are structured, it's not really like their writing. And so I'm a huge fan of using AI to assist workflow, but not to replace workflow in some cases. So especially on the creative side. So my process, I don't enjoy writing, but I also see a tremendous amount of value in articulating my thoughts, because that's essentially how you put thought leadership out. And that could be whether it's structuring, content for a video or a podcast, or if I'm just writing an email. So my process is I'll set a timer for 6 minutes. on my computer and I close my eyes and I type into a blank document. And there's no backspacing allowed and there's no pausing allowed. So I literally sit outside and I look like a person possessed. Like I'm like literally just typing with my eyes closed. And when the timer goes off, then you look at this block of text and it looks like it could have just been hieroglyphics, for all we know. But the key here is this, is I'm using that like there's two sides of our brain. Like there's the creator and then there's the editor. I think a lot of practitioners can relate to this because we're all perfectionists, is you end up writing, but half the time you're going backwards, backspace, correcting, all this kind of stuff. So in this process, I don't allow myself to edit. I just go. Like it doesn't even matter what's coming out of my head, and I'm just trying to get it out. There's usually a little bit of an idea of like what I'm talking about. It gets within 6 minutes, I have this block of text that makes no sense. Now I take that and I throw that into ChatGPT, and I'm like, please clean this up and center it around the big idea that I'm talking about. And so now it'll clean that up and I get it back and then I do a one final pass. But the difference here is that these are my words that it's simply edited as opposed to its words that I edited. And I think that's the big distinction is I don't think like if people think that AI content is going to be good enough for them to rise above the noise, I think they're greatly mistaken. And I think the one thing that's going to rise to the top is wisdom, which comes from experience and perspective. And listen, like it takes me 10 minutes out of my day to do that. And it's one of the most important things that I think anyone can do for their business. So that's my process. But I think the thing is like the more you share, when I say your message, like a lot of times I'm not even talking about tactical stuff, right? It's like I see things in life and I'm drawing lessons, right? Like my kids play soccer and one of the kids plays on a team that has horrible coaching and they've got terrible standards. And then he's trying with another team that has way better coaching with way better standards. And then I take a lesson from that and I bring it into someone's life and in their business. And hopefully my readers or our viewers get value from that. But to be honest, I don't even care. I don't even look at the metrics. I could care less. I create because I know I have to get it through me. It's a message that I just have to get out to the world. And who knows? Like, I had no idea you're listening to my podcast. And just like you have no idea who's listening to this podcast.
Right.
And so I think when you share your truth, not like what's going to go viral, the right people will tune in. And you don't need tens of millions of people. You just need like a few of the right people. And I think that comes through very cleanly when it's just you. And if you want to use AI to support that in the cleaning up process, at least that's kind of how I've done it. So,
Yeah. So that's really great. I do something very similar. I don't type because I'm a terrible typist. It would take me 16 times the amount of time it would take you to type it. I go outside and I walk every morning with my phone and I talk into it. And then
it's
I
good.
take whatever I wrote, whatever and transcribe it. And I think that with the message that I got from what you just stated is that if your purpose is intentional and it's
Yeah.
not for a result, then your content is going to be true. That's the authenticity. And it's going to connect with the people that are interested in what you have to offer versus just
Yeah.
trying to find more customers, more patients, and all of that.
Yeah. I think it's like you can't be blind to what moves people into action or what grabs
Right.
attention. Like it's important to understand that, but it's also very dangerous to be like, oh, that format or that specific piece of content is what's really going like crazy. I'm also going to do that. And I think it's actually okay for people to try that because what'll happen is you realize you're selling your soul
Right.
for vanity. And then you're like, that's not even my truth.
Right.
For me personally, I can't stand Instagram. Can't stand it.
That's literally the next question I have is
Right.
let's talk
And
about
so I will
Instagram.
post stuff on Instagram about how much I hate the platform, or we're running ads, and people are like, well, why are you on Instagram? I'm like, I don't care. Like I feel compelled to just like share. And if some people don't like it, that's fine, but other people do. But most importantly, I'm just like, I just want to share something. Like it's
Right.
honestly just to like get it out of my system half the time.
That's really interesting. And honestly, if you did share to get the attraction, you would end up with a bunch of people that you didn't really want to connect with
Yeah.
anyway. So I like that approach. But let's talk about Instagram versus YouTube because you are very vocal about that.
Yeah.
And so is there ever a time for a practitioner to be on Instagram? And if so, what is that?
Well, listen, I think the one thing Instagram has over YouTube is the DM feature. I mean, that's how we connected, right? So
Right.
like that's a huge benefit. The challenge for this market, this is my opinion, because there are plenty of examples of people that have done very well with Instagram, obviously. I look at practitioners as having this unbelievable wisdom that people have no idea about. And we take it for granted. Like, it's like, oh, I should be drinking like water. Huh, interesting. That's amazing. And so what's happening is what I've noticed is there's so many amazing practitioners who have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, and they're trying to fit into this Instagram mold of like, do this like funny little dancing video for 30 seconds from your clinic, or have one of your like office managers do some nonsense. And I'm like, in what world does that even like remotely make sense? Because you think it's going to get views. As an example, we just had a call with a psychiatrist yesterday, and she reached out to us for help kind of growing her business with YouTube. And her frustration with Instagram is she has like a handful of posts that have millions of views that have gone viral. So
Wow.
out of curiosity, I went to her page and I had a look at them. And I was like, obviously, it's a 5-second video. It's a B-roll of just her saying nothing, just her on camera for 5 seconds, and a block of text over top. And it has like 1.5 million views. I'm like, congratulations, you have the vanity metric, and you have no reason for someone to even take the next step with you. They've learned nothing. There's no perspective. There's no like, etc. So when you look at the best sources of clients or patients, podcast, YouTube are 1 and 2. Why is that?
Mhm.
Because people spend time on brand with you. It's
Right.
never happening from an 8-second clip on Instagram. So Instagram is good at maybe getting attention,
Mhm.
but that's pretty much where it stops.
It's like a
And
billboard.
it's a billboard. Yeah, like be cool. If you want to play that game, some people are a little bit more short form skilled, I guess, and that's cool. But for me, I'm a little bit more long-winded. Some people don't like that. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to shoot a 38-minute video that's going to be boring as hell, but the right people are going to watch or listen to the whole thing, and those are my people. And I think that's the thing, is like, I'm building content that fundamentally helps people. And if you think 30 seconds is too much of your time, you're not my person, right? Like,
Right.
I don't want to work with you. Okay, like, what do you want me to do? So that's my perspective. But again, there's plenty of people who've done well on Instagram. But that, I think, for practitioners who are just tired of playing that game, it's like they want to teach, they want to help people. And I think longer form content is where that lives.
Hey listeners, whether this is your first episode of Beyond Hormones or your 50th, I hope you can tell by now how much I love working in the hormone industry and sharing my tips, experience, and guest stories to help you succeed. Your success is truly my personal joy. So if you don't mind, I want to take a quick moment to share a product of ours that I know will truly help many of you build the clinic you have been dreaming of. It's called Practice Automation System. Now, here's something that most of the clinics I've spoken with that have scaled past 7 figures have quietly figured out. Most marketing doesn't fail trying to get leads. It fails after you've already reached them. According to studies, up to 87% of people don't pick up unknown calls anymore. Isn't that crazy? But deep down, I bet you realize it's true. I know I don't answer unknown phone calls, do you? So that means even if your front desk is being incredible and calling them as soon as they come in, there's a good chance they're not going to reach them. And if that's all you try, your marketing dollars just vanished. Not because your advertising didn't produce, it's because your message didn't get through. The Practice Automation System is what we built so that doesn't happen. To reach someone these days, you need to nurture them. They used to say it took 5 to 7 touches to reach someone. Now it can be as high as 20, 30, or even more. We help you text them within 5 minutes, nurture them automatically for weeks and months. The pipeline keeps moving even when your front desk is busy. I spent years running and growing a hormone clinic in Orlando where we grew to over 1,000 patients, 4 providers, and 23 staff members. So we know this works. You know why? Because we used it ourselves well before we turned this into a product. We're not guessing what hormone patients need because we experienced it. To find out if Practice Automation System is the solution you've been looking for, go to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com/automation. That's acceleratedmedicalpractices.com/automation. All right, let's get back to the show. my background is marketing. So I view all of that, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, ads, all of that as the way to get the attraction.
Yeah.
But to really connect with a patient, you need some sort of a lead magnet, some sort of a thing that you exchange for a phone number or an email address. What is your opinion about what practitioners should be using for lead magnets to get the right people to connect with them?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of looking at this. So you can go, I mean, there's two ways. So I look at this as the commitment conversion spectrum.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you have something that's low commitment, you'll have a very high conversion. So an example that would be like a one-page cheat sheet, right? Or a
Hmm.
one-page checklist. Here are 5 things to look for in your thyroid test to like blah, blah, blah. That's going to have a high conversion because it's very low commitment. It's one page. It's not going to take up a lot of my time. I put in my name and email. I got it. But those types of lead magnets give you little more than like an email list. They're not really truly committed people.
Right.
And this is the balance of really understanding what is the objective of the business. Because on the other side, you could have a webinar, which I'm a huge fan of, even in this day and age, where you have people opt in to watch an evergreen webinar at the minimum, and it might be 45 to 60 minutes. And then the thinking is that, well, fewer people want to do that because of it's a time commitment. And that's the idea is I want people to spend more time with me, even if there's fewer of them, because the more time people spend with you, the more likely they are to spend money with you. So it depends on what the objectives are. And I know some businesses will do a combination of everything. They'll have some PDFs, some cheat sheets, but again, then you have complexity in the business. You have to manage the messaging and funnels for different things. And this was my first business. That's part of why I sold it because we had like 100 different funnels between like free lead
Wow.
magnets and products and supplements and courses. It was exhausting. And I think if you have the infrastructure to run that and you want to, by all means, go for it. But for most practitioners who are running most of it themselves, or if they have like one point person on their team, I think you want to figure out like one acquisition channel, one core offer, and how do you get people into that core offer? So, like in our experience working with all of our clients over the years, we've helped them go from like meta ads to a webinar, like a free evergreen on-demand webinar. On the back end of that, they're booking a discovery call, whether it's paid or free, and they're having a consultation about possibly working together. That funnel works, right? So does every other funnel, right? But it's like you can't do all of them at the same time.
Right.
So, like even nowadays, like for our YouTube Authority engine, which is a 100% done for you service, we actually don't even collect emails because we're running ads. I don't even want to optimize for leads. I only want to optimize for the highest quality people who are like certain criteria who book a call. So I understand the trade-off is I'm not collecting leads like I would if I had a two-page cheat sheet, but I also realize the people that are opting in for that stuff are not my perfect client. And
Hmm.
so I think it really comes down to like what is the objective that you're trying to optimize for and then reverse engineer that, right? But there's also value in building an email list because maybe over time some of those people ascend to the level that you want to work with them at. So that's why it's never a one size fits all thing, but it really is. I'm a huge fan of like context. Like I really want to understand like what is the context of this business and does this particular thing make sense for that particular context?
Okay, so the geek in me has like 1,000 questions about what you just said, but I'm gonna start with this one. So you work with a lot of practitioners that are almost like in second stage. They've already reached maybe $1 million or looking to excel and grow. Is that correct?
Well, a
Am I
little bit
correct?
of both. I mean,
A little bit of
typically
both.
we're working with experienced practitioners. Some of
Experience. Okay.
them are financially much further ahead, but very seldomly are we like, I just graduated from school. Can you help me?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the hormone space, though, because it's kind of an exploding industry, there are a lot more people getting into it. There's a lot more startups.
Yeah.
So if a hormone practitioner came to you, just opened their practice, been open for 6 months, is funding it themselves, has like $1,000 to $1,500 a month to spend in marketing, and again, I understand that you need more information to really give the perfect answer, but like in general, what do you think you'd advise somebody in that position to do to
Yeah.
start gaining some traction?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would ask, what is the value of a new patient to that practice? Like roughly,
Like
like a
three
couple
thousand
hundred
dollars
bucks,
a
a couple
year.
$1,000.
Usually like 3,000 a year. Usually
Okay.
like hormone patients stay between 3 and 5 years, lifetime value about 15,000.
And there were kind of like repeated visits
Hmm.
over
Yep,
time as opposed to like a one lump sum up front.
exactly.
So that's really important because that's going to determine to a certain extent the monetization model. of acquiring clients. So I'll give you an example. So we actually have someone I spoke with recently. He has a similar type of business to this, but it's not actual like hormones. It's a course about hormones.
Okay.
And so they took over another business that built out all the stuff, and they had a tough time making it work in terms of new client acquisition from ads. And I said, "Oh, well, I mean, what's the price point for the course?" And he said $99. I was like, obviously, that's never going to work with advertising because
Right.
your margins, you're going to be negative for 6 months before you even break even. So I think the starting point is what is the price point of the offer? Second thing is how long does it take to collect that cash? So you said over a year. So now we have to think about, okay, if it's going to take me a year to collect $3,000, what's my acquisition cost? Because if the acquisition cost, let's call it $100 from, and I always like starting with advertising because it's the cleanest math.
Mhm.
If it costs us $100 to acquire one client that pays us $3,000 over a year, on surface level, that sounds awesome because theoretically their first session is going to be more than $100, right?
Mhm.
So you're going to
Yeah.
break even, you're going to be positive very quickly. But I'm also looking at how do we front load cash? Because the most important thing to scale quickly is being able to cover your acquisition cost, unless you're getting VC funding and you've got tens of millions to burn. Most
Right.
people don't. So you have to say, okay, how do I make money in the service of other people who are going to pay me money? And then that just becomes the flywheel. So I'm always looking at what has to be true in order to be, we'll call it ROAS, return on ad spend, positive in the first 30 days. So if I spend 10, or let's say I spend $1,500 a month in meta ads to put an offer in front of people, I need to build this system so I'm at least collecting 2,000, 2,500 in the first 30 days. Because obviously you're going to have to collect more cash to cover other expenses, maybe your own payroll, et cetera. But when I have a model that I know is producing a positive ROAS of 1.5 to 2 in the first 30 days, knowing that I'm still collecting cash after that, I go all in. And that's the key is like, because what a lot of people do is they'll open up a practice and they say they've got hormones or whatever else. And then they just get word of mouth. And then people fall in their lap and maybe they post some contents and some people come in. The problem with that, though, is they actually don't go through the pain, quote unquote, pain of really figuring out is this acquisition model sustainable at scale? Can we actually, word of mouth is awesome, but what if we could just go to Meta or Google Ads and why not spend 15,000
Mhm.
a month? Like if you had capacity to deliver, what's holding you back from going to 15,000? Well, if we spend 15,000, we don't make that much in the first 30 days and therefore we're net negative. It's like, well, okay, cool. If you don't have the cash flow to sustain that, you have to figure out ways to price it. So maybe on $3,000, you collect 1,500 up front and you build the package out over 3 to 6, 12 months where there's a bigger upfront and a smaller tail. And
Right.
so I'm always looking at these different ways of how do I make anything work with advertising? Because if that model works there, then it's like you just put any other traffic source and it's just like gravy on top of that. So that would be how I look at that is I'm looking at what is the patient value? How do we work within that? And if we can, is a paid acquisition model applicable there? If so, what has to change, if anything, with that, the monetary side of things to collect as much cash up front? And then we can worry about capacity constraints and other stuff after that. Does that
Yeah,
answer
those
your
are the
question?
problems you want to have. Yeah, that was great. And I love about your answer is that you didn't just focus on the cost per lead or the cost per acquisition. You also focused on the price point of what you're providing, how
Yeah,
you're collecting the money. You're looking at goals too. Like this is one thing that I find really challenging when someone comes to me and they want to talk about marketing. My first question is always, well, how much money do you want to be at the end of the year in revenue? And let's work backwards versus
yeah,
just figuring out how much we're going to spend in marketing. And a lot of practitioners don't seem to do that work up front. Do you find that to be the case as well?
totally. They're always like, I have a budget for marketing. I'm like, why would you have a budget if you knew the return was just feeding itself? I have no budget on marketing. Like if our marketing doesn't work, we have a budget. If
Right.
our marketing works, we have no budget. Like
Right.
if someone spends $100,000 a month on ads and they make 200,000, do you need a budget? No. So
No.
why would you not push it to 500,000 a month or a million a month? And it's like, well, then I can't handle all that business. Figure it out, right? Revenue solves a lot of problems. You can hire people, you can build capacity, et cetera. But 100%, it's like again, it's a mindset. It's like they don't see business or marketing in that same kind of conversations we're talking about. A lot of times it's they're like, what's the cheapest lead cost? What's, blah, blah, blah. And it's irrelevant, right? It's like, what's going to produce the best return? I was talking to a client yesterday and he's like, I'm like, what's the one thing I can help you with in our conversation today? And he's like, well, like I'm looking at my numbers and my opt-in rate is just not great. It's still like 11 to 12%. And I was like, and I'm like, let's look at your critical numbers. I'm like, what's your ROAS? Because he's running this whole model on Meta ads. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, we're doing like 455% ROAS. So I'm like, does the opt-in rate even matter at this point? Right? Like,
Right.
how much are you paying for a client? $1,100. How much are you charging? 7,500.
Okay, I'll
And I
take
was
that.
like, so I'm like, do you know which question I'm going to be asking you next? He's like, yeah. Why am I not spending more on ads? I'm like, exactly. And I'm like, what's the answer? He's like, no, I don't know. I just needed to hear it, I guess. Right. So a lot of times we're optimizing for things that don't even matter. And it's like, yeah, could you optimize the opt-in page to 15%? Maybe, but like, who cares? That's not the constraint in the whole model. It's just like double down and let's go. And again, that's where I think, guidance from people like yourself or myself can give them that perspective to recognize it doesn't matter what your cost per lead is. It's how much are you paying for a patient?
Yeah.
And what's the delta between that and their value? And does that make sense? Because you're only going to take cost to acquire patients so low. It's not going to go to zero. So, like, how do we increase LTV? How do we increase patient value so that we can have more margin? Because if you're willing to spend twice as much to acquire a patient as someone else down the street, you're going to win the business because you can outbid them in any advertising platform. You have more endurance, runway, et cetera, because the model supports it compared to someone else who has to bring in leads under like $5.
Now, a practitioner may not know all of this, right? And obviously, there are plenty of places to learn this from you, from me, from Alex Ramosi. Like, there's plenty of places you can learn about marketing and the numbers and all of that. I
Yeah.
wonder, though, if some of the barrier to understanding and even executing has to do with something deeper, a limiting belief that maybe a practitioner has that I'm not a business person, I don't understand this, maybe even fear that if they
Yeah.
do well, how are they going to maintain? How are they going to grow? How are they going to take care of everybody? How are they going to hire a provider that's just like them? Do
Yeah.
you help your clients with that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah. I mean, like it's always between the ears for sure. I have a firm belief that revenue solves pretty much all problems.
Hmm.
Like I was just having a conversation with our leadership team about a pretty bold kind of initiative that we're bringing to the forefront. And they're looking backwards to be like, well, like, I don't know, based on this, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm like, I don't care, right? Like, do you think Elon has any type of previous data to support going to Mars? No, he's like, we're going to go to Mars and we're going to figure it out.
Right.
What I love doing, and this is, I think, the difference between being a clinician and being like a CEO, is entrepreneurs or CEOs, however you want to define us, like, okay, you have to be willing to bet on yourself, right? And I told our team, I'm like, listen, we have a 12-month runway to figure this out. This is going to help us generate significantly more revenue. And in that process, with that revenue, we can hire the world's best people to help solve this. Or we can just keep plodding along, playing it safe. And I understand that for a lot of people, the challenge with practitioners, and I was just having dinner with a good buddy of mine who's a chiropractor, and like he resonated with this because he's like, a lot of them come from a very medical science background, right? Show me the double placebo controlled study. Even if you think of a lot of the allopathic doctors, like so like the doctors, surgeons, dentists, if you think of how most of them got into practice, it wasn't like they were playing house when they were 5 saying, I want to be a doctor. It's like a lot of times it's their parents
Mm.
who were doctors or dentists, or they pushed them into that. And the reason was so they could make good money. And so they get into these professions where they spend 10, 15 years busting their chops. Then they're in a hospital or a clinic and they're grinding away making money. And they're so busy in the trenches, they can't even look from the 30,000-foot view on the business. And then it's like, well, dude, if you want to step out of this, you have to step out of it for a moment to work on the business, not just in it. They're like, I don't have time. I'm like, I
Hmm.
get it. There needs to be a sacrifice somewhere though, because
Right.
otherwise you're never going to have time. And so it really is a mindset. And like the most successful practitioners that I've worked with, always have a willingness to learn the business side of things. Or they just understand, like, I'm a great clinician, but it doesn't matter because no one knows about me.
Right.
Or if I don't understand how to run the business, and it doesn't mean you do everything in the business, but it's like if you don't understand how to be the CEO, then you are the best paid slave. That's pretty much what it
Right.
is. And if you're okay with that, that's cool. I don't know how to hire. I don't know how to lead a team. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff either. You can learn, you can hire people, you can like, this is where education comes in. Like I've spent 50 times more money on my self-education after university than what I spent to go to university.
Yeah.
Most practitioners, it's the complete opposite. They're spending 300, 400, $500,000 on school. They're spending the next 10 years in debt. And then they're like, I spend $1,000 a month in ads and that we've exceeded our budget. I'm like, dude, you are so fried. You're toast. Like it's so small. And they want to leave their space. I'm like, come on, man. Like, let's get serious. So, like, I
That's
was
awesome.
talking to a surgeon the other day, 15 million revenue, $200,000 a procedure. We're talking at 6:30 in the morning his time, and he's already in the scrubs. I'm like, dude, is this a normal day for you? He's like, yeah, man, like 7 till 7 every day. I'm like, what happens if you take a week off? He's like, nothing happens. I'm like, so I don't care if you charge $200,000 of surgery. As soon as you take a week off, your business goes to zero. That's not a business. And
Mhm.
so the reason we were talking is because he recognizes that and he realizes he needs to grow his revenue a bit to hire another surgeon so he can step back and actually have a life. And unfortunately, that's not taught in school.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be able to put a different hat on if you want a different outcome.
So, kind of bringing this back full circle because YouTube is where you play. You really do believe that's the best place for people to get the word out. Tell us about your Done For You program. I listened to, I think it was February 8th, the podcast where you like announced it for the first time and you had the
Yep.
waiting list. And it sounded like the way you were describing, because I did listen to all the episodes prior to, like something clicked for you where you said, I have to do this for
Yeah.
practitioners. So, what was that thing? And then tell us about the program.
So my first business was largely built on YouTube. So I published thousands of videos, health, wellness, fitness, and that grew to a very high level. And then when I started Healthpreneur in 2017, I didn't do any YouTube for like 5 years. It was only meta ads to webinar, and we just doubled down on that. That was it. We got to a point in the business where, especially after COVID, I started noticing changes in the market. There's way more skepticism, way more offers. Everyone is a coach now, whatever. And and I also had more capacity and space to like just want to share stuff. And so I told the team, because we had been like, I think at that point, we were just ironically treating our Healthpreneur channel like a public Dropbox. There was no rhyme or reason. It was just like throwing some stuff up there. So about 3 years ago, I told the team, I'm like, guys, like, okay, we have the meta stuff. We're going to continue spending money on ads. This is like, I love advertising because at the click of a button, like you can generate business. However, I'm thinking 10 years down the road, right? I want to own this space. I want to be a thought leader. When everyone thinks of building a health business, they think of Healthpreneur. And I want to add a lot more value than just running ads. And I told the team, I don't care what comes from this for the next 3 years. I'm just going to put out content that I think is valuable based on what we're seeing with our clients. And hopefully, I know based on having done this before, it'll take off. So that happens. And the first year was a little bit slow. And, we started getting some traction. And then in the past 2 years specifically, it's helped contribute $21.4 million dollars to our business, which is pretty amazing. That's not directly necessarily, it's direct and indirect. And this is the thing that a lot of people have to recognize. And this is the big pivot for the big epiphany for us. So we track all of our client journey. So from the click, we use Hyros to track the whole thing. Pre-COVID, it was like click, ad, opt in, book, call, purchase. Post-COVID, click ad, click another ad, go to a main website, open up another browser, search all over the place, and the client journey was like massive. And I started to realize that our best leads were coming from our website, like our main healthpreneurgroup.com website. So what was happening was people would find us on Meta. They'd open up another browser in some cases and just like type in healthpreneur. And then our main website would show up and then they'd like go around. And I was like, that makes sense. That they kind of see what we're all about. So then I started to think, well, what if what if we just built an ecosystem where we actually had useful content on YouTube as well, where they could also do that? And that's how the whole thing snowballed. Um, so, anyways, the other thing too is that I think advertising, for instance, with Meta specifically and YouTube are fundamentally different animals. Meta is amazing for letting people know you exist. YouTube is amazing for helping them decide why they should choose you. And I think that's the fundamental difference, that it's not either or. And there's a reason that almost every single business coach that I'm aware of is taking YouTube very seriously over the past 2 years. And I'm sure you've seen them as well. They were heavily reliant on ads, which they still do, but they're like, if I don't do this as well, there's no trust over here. And so that's for us personally why we made that addition over about 3 years ago. And we saw the contribution to our business. In that process, we had a lot of clients who we were supporting mostly on the ad front who also started dipping their toes into YouTube. And we started supporting them strategically, right? Not the done for you side, just like coaching and strategy and so forth. And their channels took off, and like majorly, like 48 million views, built seven-figure businesses on the back end of content, invited to like 2 hour interviews on Tucker Carlson, quotable, like major breakthroughs. And what happened is a lot of them started shifting their focus from meta ads to YouTube almost exclusively, because they found that like their best customers or clients or patients were coming after watching hours of their content. And the conversions were better, the show rates were better, the close rates were better. They were just better people to work with. And so this started happening, and we started to think to ourselves, because we started seeing shifts on the Meta platform as well. And there's a little bit more restrictions and problems with health and wellness practitioners with different things on Meta. And we just started thinking, well, what if like we're already doing this stuff for ourselves? We have capacity at least to handle 10 to 20 clients just with our current team. What if we just rolled this out as a done for you service? And when I say done for you, I mean like everything is done, you just hit record. So the ideation, the strategy, packaging, the thumbnails, channel management, and we rolled that out, and it was, pretty well received, and there was a lot of interest from our clients. And then we started testing this as an offer on Meta. So we're advertising this YouTube service on Meta, and right away, like when I saw numbers like that, because we had been primarily advertising our main coaching offer previous to that for 7 years. And I started to notice that cost to acquire a client was going up dramatically, and the resistance was way higher than it was because of all this stuff in the space.
Yeah.
So we decided to go to a done for you service. And we said, okay, if we're going to do this, who's the best practitioner for us to do this for? Is it someone who has all the time in the world? No, it's someone who has more money than they have time, and they just want something done for them. So we just went up market to practices that are 1 to 3 million plus. And the numbers were insane. I'm like, how is it possible we're paying like 1/10 for a significantly better qualified prospect for this offer? And that's when I knew like we just had to double down on this, because from a unit economics perspective, I hadn't seen that since like 2017. And we've tested thousands of ad variations with our offer on the coaching side. And it was just going in one direction, which is just more and more costly. It was no longer making sense for the business. But also just coming back to the alignment with our visions to help 1 billion people. And so part of the challenge that we ran into with our team in the past 8 months was we said, guys, we're making this pivot, and here are the reasons why. We fundamentally changed the business structure of like, we're no longer just a coaching offer or a business. We're adding this in, it's more service. But the alignment of the vision was the same. If we help people build their visibility in their channels on YouTube, they're going to impact significantly more people than if they didn't have this, right? We have clients that are early on, like their first couple of videos have like 100,000 views. So like are people, 100,000 of those people working with them? No, but in some way, shape or form, those videos are making a difference in that person's life. At least I like to think so. Alignment of the vision, it's actually more aligned with where we want to go. And I tell our clients this, I told our team, I'm like, guys, like, we're not just jumping ship to a shinier object. There are very specific fundamental reasons from a business perspective that we have to do this for. But also, you have to be stubborn on your vision and flexible in how you get there. And I think this is an example of that in action, where just because this thing worked for 7 years doesn't mean it's going to work for the next 70. And just like right now with our YouTube Authority engine, I think this has legs for a couple years in the way that we're doing it. And then there's going to be disruption, right? AI, whatever else. We have to be willing to adapt and pivot. But central to all of that is this aligned with our vision? And is this fundamentally helping these practitioners at the highest possible level? How do we create the best possible product or service where every single one of our clients wins? And that's to this day, like a relentless focus of ours. Like even our clients that we brought on in February, I'm like, it's not good enough. Like we have to, we constantly, every single day, we're meeting as a team, relentlessly focusing on the smallest little details to make it exceptional. And that for me is like, if people pay us money, we owe it to them, especially when we almost own the whole process to create something phenomenal. And I like that. I like creating great things because I think so much out there is just so average. And that's just, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to take on those challenges and those puzzles. And I think YouTube is, I don't see a world in which every practitioner shouldn't be on YouTube sharing their expertise. I just think it's just incredibly valuable for the people that are looking for those types of answers.
It's so rare to hear someone talk the way that you do these days, where the commitment to quality, excellence, and success is what drives the decision making. It's probably why I listen to everything you put out because, and also, again, I've been in marketing for 30 years and I've gone back and forth between done for you, done with you, DIY. Done for you always wins. Like you can coach somebody to the best of your ability and show up 110%, but if they're
Yep.
not willing to do the work, it's not going to happen. And so your
Yep.
commitment to a smaller number of customers, but done for you service at a high quality, high level to guarantee the result will give those people that are able to connect with you get the result that they are after.
Yeah. And it's, listen, like I'm not saying this is the right model for everyone. I was telling our clients yesterday, I'm like, even though we're shifting into more of this done for you service, and we still have a higher level advisory that we still do, which is more like the one-on-one advisory stuff. I said, I'm like, listen, for you guys, coaching is still very, very like it's very needed. It's not like AI is going to replace this. But I think another, and I was sharing this with them, like for me, it's really, really hard to build a business when you have the premise where the vast majority of your clients are not going to hit the results that you want or that they want. And I was talking with my buddy the other night. He was a chiropractor. He worked at cardiac rehab in Toronto when he graduated from chiropractic college. And he was sharing with me, and I remember him telling me this way back in the day. These are people who had heart attacks and strokes who would go into cardiac rehab. They'd have all the access to the best providers, services, etc. He's like, "Do you want to know what the retention rate was on that?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, 35%.
Huh?
And I'm like, that is so interesting that you mentioned that number because that's essentially the retention rate we saw with our coaching business. In spite of relentless pursuit of making it better, relentlessly pursuing trying to, like the winners are going to win no matter what, right? But we wanted to build something that even those that were a little bit maybe not at the highest level would still win. And as much as we improved the product, as much as we improved like the coaching, et cetera, it was like 35%, 40% at the most. And it was a little bit disheartening because it's like you want to help people, but you have no control over their actions and their mindset and so forth. And so it's not that I don't believe that people can change. I'm like, obviously, the right people can,
Yeah.
but it was really tricky because, like, I have a tremendous amount of love and respect for all the clients I've ever worked with. And the sad reality is, like, as good as we are, it was never about us. It was about who they were coming into working with us. And I've said this a million times, winners win no matter what, right? Harvard doesn't turn average people into great people. They just find great people
Mm.
and it makes Harvard look great. So with how we've shifted our business model a little bit now is like, instead of trying to like save people and build them up from ground zero to wherever, we're just like, you're already on a rocket ship. Let's just give you better fuel, right? Because it's going to allow, we can make so much more impact with small hinges swing big doors, like that whole idea with the right people, as opposed to trying to be like, oh, we can help you from the ground up. And eventually it's just unfortunate, but that was part of the decision as well.
Well, it comes back to what you said earlier, that it is up to the practitioners to be invested in understanding business. Like,
Yeah.
even if they're not going to be the ones that are writing the ads or writing their own blogs, or, obviously they have to record their own videos, but like they have to know enough about what they're buying and about what their business needs to do in order for them to know that they have the right partners, and they have to show up. And at the end of the day, like you said, just not everybody's willing to show up. So,
Yeah. And it's
uh,
hard because like you want everyone to win. And when people
yeah.
don't, you take it personally until you realize like you can't. Like you do the best you can. If they do their part, great. If they don't, they're just gonna have to. And I tell people, I'm like, I know you don't want to hear this, but it's always working. You think it's not working, but it's working. It's working on you or it's working for you. And it doesn't work for you until it's done the work on you. And so, like, for a lot of people, they don't want to hear that because it implies that they are not good enough, which is true. Yet, right? You got to stay in the trenches. You got to keep learning. You got to keep getting punched in the face because there's no helicopter coming to save you here. And unfortunately, most adults are children in bigger clothing and they don't take responsibility. And I'm not abdicating,
No, no,
like,
I agree with you.
but that's frustrating sometimes. But it is what it is. Like it's life on planet Earth. And I think if we just do what we can to control what we can and be as good as we can, hopefully we align with the right people who also feel that way and the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. I truly appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom. We didn't get a chance to talk about my favorite episode, the four different areas of marketing, but I'm going to link that in the show notes so that people
Sure.
can listen to it because it's just so great. But before I let you go, I have a thing I do. I stole it from Steve Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, where I have my last guest ask a question for my current guest. So I have a
Yeah.
question for you from my last guest. And by the way, I'm gonna, for anyone who's listening who is like really enjoying listening to Yuri talk, I'll have the links to your YouTube channel, to your Instagram, even though, your thoughts on Instagram,
Drop me a
but
DM.
still
I'll
your
say hi.
content's great. So my question for you is, what is something cool that you have learned recently?
So we got a new dog. So we used to have two wiener dogs and we put them down a couple years ago because they were like 13, 16. But we got a new wiener dog about a month and a half ago. And what's been really cool is like we're actually learning how to train her properly
Oh, wow.
compared to our previous dogs, where it was just like a bark fest. And so that's been really cool to see how quickly, and I like to think she's a smart dog, but maybe it's just all dogs are like that, how quickly she responds to proper training.
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow, if I had known this like 16 years ago. So I think that's a really big win for myself and our family because we have four kids and like getting them to be able to train the dog, I think is really helpful. So that's cool. Like even just learning is something as simple as how to get a dog to stop jumping on you and like get them to stay and sit, like super basic things. It's so cool to see it play out in real time.
That's awesome. And I imagine there's going to be a YouTube video about that sometime in the near future.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, like, well, here's the thing. We learned that from YouTube. So,
Well, it's so funny. So I don't know if you listen to my podcast at all, but I had a guy on, Chad Singer. He does dog training,
yeah,
and he actually came on to talk about marketing. But he's an excellent dog trainer. So if you have, and he has a huge YouTube channel. So
nice. Chad
in
Singer, I'll
case you want
check
to
it
go
out.
check it out, Chad Singer. Yeah, great guy.
Amazing.
All right, Yuri, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today
You're
and
welcome.
sharing
Thanks for
all of
having
your
me.
wisdom for everybody. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Beyond Hormones, the business of wellness. I hope that you're walking away with fresh ideas and real strategies you can use to grow your practice with profit and purpose. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if something you heard today resonated with you, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend or colleague. It's one of the best ways you can support the show, and it might be exactly what they need to hear right now. If you want even more tools and support, go ahead and head over to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. Until next time, keep doing the work that matters. Your patients need you, and I am cheering you along every step of the way.